All right, let's dive into one of the most influential and, let's be honest, often misunderstood political ideologies out there: conservatism. Now, to really get to the heart of what it's all about, we're going to start with a question that kind of pushes back against a very modern idea. We live in a world that constantly tells us that progress is everything. New is always better. But is all change actually good? Are there things, traditions, institutions, certain values that maybe we should fight to protect? That very question, that gut feeling to conserve, well, that's the seed from which this whole worldview grows.
So to really get what makes conservatism different, think about the pace of change. On one side, you've got ideologies that are all about pushing for rapid, sometimes even revolutionary transformation. But then you have conservatism. It's not that it's against moving forward at all, but it's a lot more cautious. It's deeply suspicious of moving too fast and breaking things.
So, what does this desire to conserve really mean in practice? Look, it's not about trying to freeze society in the past. It's more about a deep-seated suspicion of these grand, sweeping changes. It's that voice in the back of your head that asks, hey, wait a minute, are we absolutely sure this is a good idea? Have we really thought through what could go wrong here?
And this cautious approach? It wasn't dreamed up in some quiet, peaceful library. No, it was forged in the fires of one of the most violent and chaotic events in modern history. Conservatism was born as a direct reaction against revolution.
Think about it. The French Revolution promised this amazing utopia of liberty and equality, but what it delivered, at least in the eyes of many, was chaos, terror, and the guillotine. Thinkers like Edmund Burke were absolutely horrified. They saw revolutionaries trying to just erase centuries of tradition and build a whole new world based on abstract ideas. For Burke, this wasn't progress, it was pure arrogance. And that moment, that was the Big Bang for modern conservative thought.
And this right here clears up a huge misconception about conservatism. Burke wasn't arguing against all change. He believed in, and this is key, a prudent willingness to change in order to conserve. Think of it like you're taking care of a beautiful old building. You don't just knock it down because it's old. No way. You carefully repair it, you update it where you need to, but you preserve its essential structure.
So what's this worldview actually built on? Let's take a look at the blueprint of belief, and we can break it down into 5 core pillars that really define traditional conservative thinking.
All right, first up, and this is the big one, tradition. And I mean tradition with a capital T. This is all about a profound respect for the institutions, the values, and the customs that have been handed down to us through generations.
But why hold the past in such high regard?
Well, for some conservatives, like Burke, tradition was seen as reflecting a divine or a natural order of things. For others, the reason is a lot more practical. Tradition is basically the accumulated wisdom of countless generations. It's what has survived because it works. It gives society a stable anchor, and for individuals, it gives us a sense of identity, of knowing where we come from.
Now, this respect for tradition leads us directly into our second pillar, a pretty skeptical view of human nature itself. You could call it human pessimism.
As the political philosopher Noah Alzovin put it, conservatism is a philosophy of imperfection, committed to the idea of limits. At its very core is the belief that humanity isn't perfectible. We are fundamentally flawed.
From this viewpoint, humans are seen as morally imperfect, kind of selfish and greedy, and intellectually limited. Left to our own devices, we tend to mess things up. And this belief leads directly to the need for a strong state with tough laws and clear moral guidance. The whole point is to provide the order and security that flawed humans naturally crave.
So, this view of the flawed individual leads to our third pillar, the idea of an organic society. Conservatives don't see society as a machine that you can just tinker with and re-engineer whenever you want. No, they see it as a living, breathing organism that has grown slowly and naturally over centuries.
And in this living organism, we aren't just isolated atoms floating around. We're deeply connected through all these layers of belonging, our family, our community, and our nation. And true freedom, from this point of view, isn't just the liberty to do whatever you want. It's the security that comes from knowing your place and fulfilling your duties within that whole.
And that idea of everyone having their own place leads us straight to our fourth pillar. And this one definitely clashes with a lot of modern ideas about equality. It's a belief in hierarchy and authority. So the traditional conservative argument is that, just like any living thing, society is naturally hierarchical. Some parts are just more important than others. This led to this idea of a natural aristocracy, the belief that talent and leadership are innate qualities you're born with. From this perspective, a ruling class has a sort of natural authority and a duty to lead, which is seen as absolutely essential for keeping society stable.
Now, this of course brings up a massive question for us to think about. Is this idea of a natural aristocracy just a pragmatic, realistic view of how the world works, or is it really just a convenient excuse to justify and maintain existing inequalities?
And that brings us to the fifth and final pillar of traditional conservatism, a concept that really ties security, order, and tradition all together: property.
So why is property so incredibly important to conservatives? Well, for one, it provides security in a world that's always changing. It gives people a tangible stake in society. I mean, if you own something, you have a really powerful reason to respect the law and maintain order, right? You want to protect what's yours.
Okay, so these 5 pillars, they form the traditional foundation. But it's so important to understand that conservatism is not this single unchanging thing. It's evolved into some very different models over time.
And the differences, well, they can be pretty stark. On one end, you have authoritarian conservatism, like in Tsarist Russia, which completely rejects democracy for absolute rule. Then, after World War II, you get Christian democracy in Europe. It fully supports democracy and a social market economy, kind of like capitalism with a strong social safety net. And then in places like the UK and the US, you have liberal conservatism, which champions free markets and privatization while still trying to hold on to traditional social values.
So, after tracing its history, its core pillars, and all its different forms, we kind of come back full circle to the fundamental question that's at the heart of this entire ideology. Everything we've talked about, from the suspicion of revolution to the focus on tradition and order, it all boils down to one core belief: that society is this precious and fragile thing we've inherited, and our main job is to pass it on, intact, to the next generation by making careful, prudent changes. And that leaves us with a final thought. Let's forget politics for just a moment. Think about your own life, your own family, your community. What traditions, what values, or what institutions do you believe are worth conserving, maybe even at all costs? For you, what is totally non-negotiable?